Welcome to Diamond Paint Readings. Tonight we'll be reading A Brush with Death, Part 1. Nice chap, but nobody likes him. Chapter 1. Saturday, 14th of June. From the Instagram feed of Chelsea Barlow. Today will be all about cleaning. Frowny face. Chelsea would always remember the weather that morning, that terrible Saturday morning, as being gloriously lovely. The real start of that summer's heat wave, people would say afterwards. As she'd driven down the leafy lanes to Hollenby Quernhow, the sky had been completely cloudless. The trees, drowning in green, stood out in sharp, enameled contrast. Not that any of this had been the utmost in Chelsea's mind as she'd approached the village in her mom's rattly old motor. Her mind had been dominated by a different image entirely. Herself the night before at Yo-Yo's, in her new pink top, clutching a WKD blue cocktail, and looking not unlike Kim Kardashian. She didn't care what anyone said. That lip enhancement had been worth every last penny. Not that anyone had said anything. That was the problem. Only 5 likes on Instagram. Her mom, her sister, and 3 mates. Nothing from Charles, nor Nate, nor all their selfies and exuberant declarations of friendship. And nothing from Josh. Okay, he and Nat were a thing, but she knew for a fact it was more off than on, and he'd been talking to her for nearly half an hour whilst Nat was off dancing with that lad from Harrogate. Driving into the village, she became aware of the usual sinking, trapped feelings. She'd have nothing worth posting for her next 6 hours, unless bin bags and spray cleaner were suddenly on trend, which, unless one was Miss Hinch, they were not. Whereas most people would have admired the cottages of honey stone or whitewashed stucco, for Chelsea they represented only one thing: cleaning. There were 4 holiday lets in the village on her boss's books, 4 to clean top to bottom, in the 7 hours between the 10 a.m. checkout and 4 p.m. when the new guests could take up residence. And it was a tough shout, no 2 ways about it. The fact they were all in the same village meant it was just about doable, but it was always a close-run thing. On more than one occasion, Chelsea had found herself frantically finishing off the last house as the new holiday makers waited outside in varying degrees of impatience, while being deprived of the first few minutes of their stay. What made the whole day so unpredictable was the state the previous tenants left the property in. The overwhelming majority were okay. Waste bagged up, towels in the bath, bedding bundled on the beds as requested. But sometimes, Chelsea knew she wasn't the tidiest of people. Ask her mom. But honest to God, the state some people would have left the place in. Bottles and glasses all over the shop, smeary finger marks on every surface, and the toilets. Even her brother used the loo brush, for God's sake. Then there were the more serious occurrences. That time when there'd been an inch of muddy silt at the bottom of the washing machine, or those acrylic paints all over the bedding, and that basque hanging like a bat from one of the light fittings. That she had posted on Instagram, until her boss Jax had told her to take it off. Smartish. And it only took one such incident, one mess, stain or spillage, in any of the 4 properties to throw the whole day out into a nightmare of hurry, rush, and stress. That awful day when no less than 3 of the houses were in such a state, her mom, her brother, had to be drugged in to help. Today she was going to start as she always did, with the snuggery, a square stone outhouse conversion at the very western edge of the village, owned by Mr. and Miss Hilton. The Hiltons lived in an adjacent barn conversion, named appropriately enough the Old Barn, and let out the snuggery for a weekly sum that left Chelsea feeling winded. She always started her cleaning there, because at just 4 rooms it was by far the smallest of the properties she cleaned, and consequently never had children or large parties staying. She turned into the gravel driveway, which lay between the 2 buildings, one short and squat, one long like a cow, and its calf, she always thought. All at once she found herself sharply braking, making the tub of sprays and polishes slide off the back seat. One of the main house's wheelie bins had been left, a lone sentinel, right in the way of her designated parking spaces in front of the snuggery. Chelsea sighed in impatience. What was that doing there? For a second, only a second, she was tempted to park by the main house, but as always, memories came back out of the time when that bitch Miss Hilton, with her hard, expressionless face and tight jodhpurs, had given her a right doing for blocking access to her 4x4, and even the black 4x4 was absent. She wasn't willing to take the chance. For all that, she thought as she parked up, she actually preferred Miss Hilton. Mr. Hilton, his toothy, smug grin and that plump face, was always ready to point out some misdemeanor with her car, or her cleaning, or even her grammar. Not that she normally saw either of them, in the 50 or so minutes it usually took her to clean the place. She got out of the car and moved the bin back to its spot, faintly puzzled. Why had the bin not been put back? One thing about Mr. Hilton, he was a right stickler for putting back all the various waste and recycling bins from the 2 properties in their exact spot. More than once she'd been the unwilling recipient of a lengthy lecture on that subject. Bin replaced, sprays, bin bags, and gloves collected from the car, Chelsea found herself pausing. It really was a lovely day. The gray wall of the snuggery was swamped in thick white blossoms, which made her think of weddings or picnics in the fields, not several hours of cleaning other people's crap. By the front door she could see a couple of charity bags, no doubt full of Miss Hilton's designer cast-offs. She felt a sudden bleak little stab. 23 and working 3 jobs, none of them amounting to much. When Mom and Dad were 23, they'd been married 2 years and living in the house in Carlton, Minot. The prospect of actually owning her own home seemed as remote to Chelsea as winning the lottery. She thought again about the cost of renting out the snuggery and shook her head at the unfairness of the world. Come on, Chelsea. No point in moping. That's what Mom would say. If she got done smartish here, she could maybe grab a selfie by those white flowers. See if that got a response from Josh. The first thing that hit her on opening the door of the snuggery was the smell of cleaning spray. Sharp, fresh, floral. This boded well, unless there'd been some major catastrophe somewhere, and the scent represented some token attempt to put it right. She went into the kitchen, always the place with the greatest potential for domestic devastation. Today it was spotless, the draining board bare, the floor swept, the hob sparkling in the morning sun, which was steaming in through the mullioned windows. Chelsea's first thought was there had been some mistake. Had the snuggery even had any tenants during that past week? But no, the hospitality tray, Yorkshire tea bags, Hamilton gooseberry jam, and 2 garden center scones was empty, and there was a light on, and the dishwasher, it seemed whoever had been there had followed Mr. Hilton's entire irritating litany of laminated instructions. Please leave cutlery in the dishwasher. Please leave the rubbish into the correct colored wheelie bin. With a lightning heart, she headed for the living room. At this rate, all she'd need to do was change the bedding. She could be out in 20 minutes. This is what was going through her mind as she opened the living room door, and her life changed forever. The lines of the Hoover on the dove-gray carpet were the one detail amidst the immaculate cleanliness that would haunt her nightmares for years to come. Mr. Hilton was seated on the slate-gray velveteen sofa. He was wearing a smartish gray jacket over a checkered shirt and an orange tie, and he was dead. Chelsea knew it instantly. There was something unmistakable about the utter stillness of his body, and there was everything about the way his head was flung back, as if howling with laughter, or just howling. And his face, that look on his face, milky eyes, wide toothy mouth, agape. Chelsea had seen one dead person before in her life. It was her Nana, Renee, in the hospice. She looked exactly as if she was sleeping, wrinkled hands folded neatly on the snowy coverlet. There'd been such a beautiful feeling of peace. That lovely Jamaican nurse had opened the window to let the soul out. Afterward, she had gently placed a flower on the pillow next to Nana Renee's head. But here, in the living room of the snuggery, there was no feeling of peace whatsoever. Here there was anger, outrage, fear even. Any released soul would, Chelsea instinctively knew, be battering at the closed window with the force and fury of an angry wasp. All at once, adrenaline exploded through her body. With a great gasp, Chelsea ran out of the snuggery and into the lane outside on legs that didn't even seem to want to work properly. If it had been Acacia Gardens, where she lived in Thirsk, there would have been someone around, cutting the grass, unloading, shopping, chatting over the fence. But here, in the idyllic village street, was deserted and drowsy in the morning sun. Her fingers, usually so adept with a phone, flat and clumsy as she attempted again and again to dial 999. As she waited for the operator, she felt a further pang of panic. What would she ask for? Police or ambulance? She was pretty sure Mr. Hilton was dead. But what if he wasn't? Would she be in trouble for getting it wrong? In the event she didn't need to ask for either, by the time she'd finished gasping out her story, the operator had decided for her and told her to wait outside for police or ambulance. She wasn't entirely sure. Standing in the deserted lane, Chelsea shivered. Despite the heat, she felt icy cold, but knew she didn't dare go back to the car for her jacket. And it was as she stood there that she realized there was a second thing wrong with the scene she just witnessed. It had been driven out by the sight of Mr. Hilton. It wasn't that it was exactly wrong, not in the way a dead body was wrong. Her shivering intensified, but it was odd, different, sinister. She shivered again. How long would whatever was coming take? She remembered the idea she had of taking a selfie by the flowers and posting it on Instagram, and suddenly she realized, on some deep, sad level, that she would never post on social media again.